So let's talk about what you're actually responsible for phase 2. So phase 2 is all about planning and research. The first phase was all about pre-planning, and you wouldn't be on this phase unless you finished phase 1 beforehand, which means you already had 5 approved objectives and you already had a game idea. So now it's time to flesh those out. So at this point your objective list has been approved and it's time to understand the work behind each objective. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take the time and you're going to research every single one of those and discover a strategy that you're going to use to implement that objective. How are you basically going to, in a broad overview, how are you basically going to program that objective? What is the logic you need in order to implement it? You need to convince me as the teacher that you understand what's required to complete each objective. If you fail to complete that understanding, then that means that you need to go back and you need to revise it. So for example, if you have projectile motion as an objective, you must explain to the teacher how you intend to track, manipulate, and apply the individual information for a projectile, not in code in English. And what do I mean by individual information? Things like its current location, what its current velocity is, how is gravity affecting it, how are any other forces like wind or anything like that affecting it. That all needs to be discussed within your technical description of the objective. So you may want to include things like necessary equations and or steps for the algorithm itself. But again, it should be fairly high level and overview, but you should be able to give me a good understanding that you know what you're talking about. So once you've done your research for all 5 of your objectives, it's time to actually complete your document that you're going to be doing here. You're going to create a formal project proposal, which again you can find on the website, the Classroom or Google Classroom or whatever it is we're using at this point in the course. It is to be a professional document, which means there should be 0 grammar and spelling errors. Use something like Grammarly or something like that, or Word spell check and that kind of stuff in there, as well as being cleanly formatted and written in the third person. You should never be writing in the first person. I should not see any I or anything like that. So basically what's on the project proposal? Well, we're going to look at a few things. So there's 5 main parts. There's a title page, which you have to do very little for. You just have to fill in some blanks. Let's take a look at the proposal so you can see. So here's the title page. You need to fill this part in with your company name. You can get rid of the square brackets. Just put your company name. Your game title. What is your game called? Down at the bottom, what is today's date and month, day, year. And then we get into some pieces that you've already done before. So your game description, basically this you already filled out during the planning phase. You can copy and paste it in here. You may want to flesh it out in a little bit more detail, but yeah, that's basically what's going on here. Then we get into part 2, the objectives, the main part of this task. So your job is for each objective, give me the objective name. So it might be inventory management system. The name should be less than or equal to 3 words. Once you've given me the name, I want the technical description. So, in the space below, describe in English, no code, how you plan on implementing each objective at a high level. So you may have a strategy on your own, you may have to research. So there may be documents on our class websites or YouTube channels that I've set up for you that discuss how to implement this thing, the very thing that you're trying to do. But you need to have an understanding so you can articulate to me that you fully understand what's going on. So again, if you have collision detection in your program, you might want to discuss, what types of collision you're going to have. Are you going to have circle to circle, box to circle, and point to box? Not only that, how are you going to implement each one of those? So for example, circle to circle collision. How does that work? Well, you have to calculate the distance between the 2 center points. Once you have that distance, if that distance is less than the sum of the 2 radii, then you have a collision. They're too close together. So that's how you do circle to circle. Notice I didn't actually talk about any code, I talked about a strategy. So you need to be able to do the same thing for your objectives. Again, on the Moodle or on the class website, at the time of you listening to this, there will be exemplars of past project proposals that other students have submitted beforehand. Now there are variations on the document you're using, but it's still basically the same idea. So once you've done that for all 5 objectives, we then need a little bit more detail on the objectives. So for each objective, you're going to come over and you're going to fill out the remainder of this chart. Again, what is the objective name? Give me a quick description of the objective. What exactly is it? Where will I see it? So these two were on the previous document in the planning phase. Again, your difficulty. You may need to change the number based on what you did the first time. The first time, you may have thought it's either a lot harder or a lot easier than you actually realize what it is once you've done your research. And then time required. This is a very important one. So based on your research, how long do you think it's going to take you to actually program this? So let's say you think it's going to take you 10 hours. Whatever number you come up with, I want you to add 30% to that. And that'll give you a little bit of buffer, just in case. So 10 hours, 30% on that would be a total of 13 hours. Why do I want to state that? Well, what that's going to do is once you've done that for all 5 objectives, it's going to allow you to build a timeline. I'm not sure why the formatting on this is all messed up right now, but it is. It's going to help you build a timeline. And that timeline is going to be used to build your milestone chart. So basically, if you know you start on date X and it's going to take you 7 hours for the first objective, then that means that if you're going to spend, I don't know, 2 hours a day, that means it's going to be done halfway through the 3rd day of programming. So you need to make sure that you understand this so you can build your date and accordingly. Create yourself a timeline and you can set up all your specific dates from here, there, and everywhere. So once you've actually come up with all that stuff, it's time to fill out your milestone checklist. Alright, so you're going to have the task number. Give me a brief description of the task. So on the previous example, where did it go? Here we see an example where we have a task 1. This is a subtask of objective 1, and here's the description. It's point-to-box collision detection. We go back. Now this chart's a little bit different from the one I'm asking you to do because it's been updated recently. How many hours is it going to take you to do? What date do you plan on having it done by? You know, is it like December 7th or something like that? And then which tasks does it depend on to do its job? Now this is the first task, so it should not depend on anything. Now all your tasks should work in chronological order, which means the earliest date should be at the top, the latest date should be at the bottom. Now I've given you 40 rows. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to use all 40 rows. Use what you need and then delete all the extra rows. Just select them and right click and choose delete row when you're on Google Docs or whatnot. Now once you've set all that stuff up, ideally speaking, you spend a lot of time and you are confident in those dates because you will be evaluated with them. The way that this works is once we get into the actual project itself, whenever you have a milestone date, the following school day you will have a meeting with me and you're going to demonstrate to me that you've completed all the pieces of that milestone. And if you did, you'll get a check mark, which is going to evaluate to marks at the end of the assessment itself. So you have to set up all those milestones. Notice the coloring that I've set up. I'd like you to follow the same coloring. So whenever you have a milestone, highlight the row and fill it in as yellow. Whenever you have an objective, highlight the row and fill it in as gray. This allows us to quickly find the important information. So that means you should have 3 yellow rows and you should have 5 gray rows. 5 objectives with 3 milestones. No more, no less. So that's the planning and research document. So once you're all done that, you're going to submit it on the class website, and the teacher is going to look it over and they're going to scrutinize it and give you some feedback. It will be evaluated heavily, as you've seen in the previous previously. Here's what the marking scheme looks like. It was in the phase 1 document. It's also in the phase 2 document right at the bottom here. So all of this that wasn't this number 4 here is all part of phase 1, or sorry, phase 2. So you're going to submit that and we're going to take a look at it in great detail, and when we're all done you're going to be evaluated on that and you're going to have to make some changes, and that's going to be the next step in the process. So make sure that you put a lot of effort into getting it right the first time, because that's where the heaviest part of marks come from, is in your initial submission of your proposal document. So put a lot of time into this piece.